Generally speaking, adipose tissue is not something most people think of positively. I found it fascinating how our understanding of adipose tissue has evolved over a relatively recent period, reshaping our views of health and driving a dramatic increase in obesity treatment. As I think back on my time in medical school, I cannot recall a single discussion or lecture on adipose tissue that went beyond its general structure and the fact that it primarily served as a site for energy storage, provided thermal insulation, and offered some protection. In 1994, with the discovery of the chemical messengers adipose tissue secretes, we now recognize adipose tissue as the body's largest endocrine organ. The term for these chemical messengers is Adipokines. Adipokines encompass a broad range of bioactive molecules that act as autocrine, paracrine, and endocrine agents. Adipose tissue can generally be divided into two types: white adipose tissue and brown adipose tissue. White adipose tissue comprises 10 to 50% of an adult's body weight, whereas brown adipose tissue comprises only 0.1 to 0.5%. The percentage of brown adipose tissue in children is somewhat higher. The primary roles of white adipose tissue are energy storage and mobilization, as well as endocrine function, whereas the primary role of brown adipose tissue is thermogenesis. At this point, the role of brown adipose tissue in humans is an active of investigation, may prove to be more important than we currently appreciate. But for now, in the rest of this lecture, when we refer to adipose tissue, we'll be focusing on white adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is classified by location. Subcutaneous fat, or subcu fat, lies beneath the skin and outside the abdominal cavity. This fat primarily stores excess energy. Visceral fat surrounds our internal organs. Visceral fat drains directly into the portal system, which takes blood to the liver. It's this fat that contributes to its greater metabolic activity. The first adipokine to consider is adiponectin. Adiponectin is elevated in metabolically healthy individuals. Adiponectin levels are associated with fat distribution. Visceral fat is linked to a lower adiponectin level, whereas subcutaneous fat is correlated with higher levels. Plasma adiponectin levels distinguish metabolically healthy from metabolically unhealthy individuals. The general actions of adiponectin, which we'll discuss in more detail, primarily involve creating metabolic conditions in skeletal muscle and the liver that allow insulin to work efficiently. Adiponectin also enhances insulin sensitivity in adipose tissue, helping us achieve safe expansion of our adipose tissue. Finally, adiponectin suppresses pro-inflammatory pathways. The second major adipokine which we'll discuss is leptin. Leptin levels primarily correlate with subcutaneous fat. Leptin can cross the blood-brain barrier and signal the brain about energy sufficiency. Like adiponectin, leptin creates metabolic conditions in skeletal muscle and liver that allow insulin to work efficiently. Consistent with its role in signaling stored energy adequacy, it limits insulin's effect on adipose tissue, preventing further expansion. Leptin has pro-inflammatory effects that support an appropriate immune response. All of these effects depend on tissues having normal leptin sensitivity. Let's now look more specifically at the effects of adiponectin on various tissues within the body. We will highlight skeletal muscle, liver, adipose tissue, vascular tissue, and its anti-inflammatory effects. First, adiponectin acts in skeletal muscle and liver to increase fatty acid oxidation. Additionally, in the liver, adiponectin decreases de novo lipogenesis, and in adipose tissue, it inhibits lipolysis. Lipid buildup and lipid metabolism intermediates are known to suppress normal insulin activity. With these effects in the skeletal muscle, liver, and adipose tissue, we see an increase in insulin sensitivity, thereby enhancing insulin's effect on glucose handling. As a result, we see increased glucose uptake in each of these tissues. In skeletal muscle and liver, we'll observe increased glycogenesis, and the liver will demonstrate decreased gluconeogenesis. Adipose tissue shows increased de novo lipogenesis. Additionally, adiponectin promotes healthy adipocyte expansion, directing fat deposition into subcutaneous tissue. Adiponectin promotes hyperplastic, which is an increase in cell number, rather than hypertrophic, which is an increase in cell size expansion. This results in adipose tissue, which is metabolically healthier. Adiponectin has a variety of effects on vascular tissue. Here we highlight that it increases endothelial nitric oxide synthase, thereby boosting nitric oxide production and promoting vasodilation and supporting healthy endothelium. Adiponectin also has potent anti-inflammatory effects, primarily by inhibiting NF-kappa B pathways that produce tumor necrosis factor alpha and interleukin B. Let's now look at the specific actions of leptin in a metabolically healthy individual. Leptin can cross the blood-brain barrier and therefore acts on the central nervous system, suppressing appetite and promoting changes that increase energy expenditure. Leptin, like adiponectin, has beneficial effects on the liver and skeletal muscle, increasing fatty acid oxidation in both and decreasing de novo lipogenesis in the liver. These effects increase insulin sensitivity in both tissues. As a result, these tissues increase glucose uptake, increase glycogenesis, and decrease glycogenolysis. Additionally, in the liver, we observe decreased gluconeogenesis and increased VLDL production, which helps reduce hepatic lipid content. Leptin's actions on adipose tissue are different from what we've seen. Because leptin signals energy sufficiency and promotes energy mobilization, it reduces insulin's normal actions in adipose tissue. We see decreased glucose entry and decreased de novo lipogenesis. Additionally, leptin increases lipolysis. These combined actions serve to limit the expansion of what is already an adequate energy store, as indicated by leptin levels. Leptin also affects vascular tissue with a variety of effects. Here, once again, we'll focus on increasing endothelial nitric oxide synthase, which causes an increase in nitric oxide, resulting in vasodilation and promoting healthy endothelium. Additionally, leptin increases endothelin-1, a potent vasoconstrictor. These appear to be conflicting responses, but when balanced, they provide normal vascular flow. Leptin is pro-inflammatory and under normal conditions promotes normal immune function. It's important to understand the relationship between adiponectin and leptin as reflected in the Adiponectin-to-Leptin Ratio. In the metabolically healthy individual, adiponectin levels are adequate, and the Adiponectin-to-Leptin Ratio is favorable, and leptin sensitivity is intact. In this setting, these two adipokines work synergistically to maintain metabolic homeostasis. In the metabolically unhealthy individual, increased visceral fat is associated with decreased adiponectin and increased leptin, resulting in an adiponectin-leptin ratio which is reduced to unhealthy levels. When this is combined with selective leptin resistance, which is typically the case, we lose the beneficial effects of leptin, such as increased insulin sensitivity, while its pro-inflammatory effects persist. This leads to metabolic dysfunction and systemic inflammation. The adiponectin-to-leptin ratio is emerging as an important biomarker for predicting cardiometabolic risk. Our discussion provides a foundation for understanding and treating leading causes of morbidity and mortality that you'll encounter in medicine, including obesity, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and atherosclerosis, among others.